Welcome to Doc Talk. My name is Kristin Klinefelter. I'm the registered dietitian nutritionist at Grand Itasca Clinic and Hospital. I do the outpatient nutrition education at the YMCA clinic. Today we are talking about healthy eating, preventing and managing type 2 diabetes. Now we say preventing and managing type 2 diabetes because basically most adults are in the category of either trying to prevent type 2 diabetes or they have the disease and they're trying to manage it. So we won't talk about statistics today, but at least 1 in 3 Americans will have type 2 diabetes in their lifetime, and even more will have pre-diabetes. So we all need to eat like we have diabetes so we can prevent it, or at least prevent the side effects that happen from uncontrolled type 2 diabetes. So no matter what kind of diabetes you have or what you're working on with your health, lifestyle is the first line of defense and treatment for all people. This includes exercise, nutrition, stress management, and sleep therapy, as well as other aspects of your life. Research shows that it is possible to prevent or delay the onset of type 2 diabetes with lifestyle, and it comes down to 2 numbers. The first one is 150 minutes of moderate exercise every week and moderate weight loss of 5 to 7% if you do need to lose weight. So as far as exercise, I mentioned 150 minutes per week. That's 22 minutes per day. The most effective has been shown to be walking because it's realistic for most people. You need a comfortable pair of shoes and a safe place to walk. And we encourage people, if you're not at that 150 minutes a week or 22 minutes a day, you can start small, and even 10 minutes at a time is effective for increasing your cardiovascular health. Exercise also might involve support and encouragement, having an exercise buddy. We do want people to get medical clearance from their medical doctor prior to starting an exercise program. If you have an exercise buddy, they'll provide that social support as well as a little bit of accountability for you. We have a lot of research that shows paying money to prevent illness costs a lot less than paying to be sick. So for example, if you're a little hesitant to put that $40 to $70 a month into joining a gym, you might be preventing an illness that's going to cost you hundreds of dollars per month in the future. So paying a little bit now, whether that's your time or your money, to exercise and prevent illness is a good thing to do. And nutrition is what we're here to talk about today. Nutrition for prevention or management does involve many aspects, and I'll start very broad and I'll make it more specific as the end of our talk comes to a close here. So we'll talk about meal planning, we'll talk about carbohydrate counting. The concept of MyPlate will be a simple concept that most people can follow, and we'll discuss that. And some major theme is that no matter what you're working on with your diet, we want to avoid fad diets or doing the latest thing that the internet or the newspaper tells us to do. These might not be based on science, and they're probably not effective for preventing or delaying the onset of type 2 diabetes. And we always talk about individualized choices. So today our talk will be a little general for most people. And if you are looking for more assistance in setting up an individualized meal plan, that should be done with a registered dietitian nutritionist. And we have availability at Grand Itasca Clinic for that, as well as a diabetes educator that's helpful in setting your individualized meal plan with you. So before I talk about diet choices, I want to get a little bit into carbohydrate digestion and absorption. It's really good for you to know what food does when it enters your body and how it affects your blood sugars. So this chart here, of course, digestion begins in the mouth with chewing, and we have the salivary glands that secrete saliva that actually start digesting carbohydrates as soon as they get in your mouth. That's why in the case of people that have a low blood sugar or hypoglycemia, we say to eat something that is a fast digestible carbohydrate, such as orange juice, because it can begin immediately as soon as you put it in your mouth. After the food or beverage that you consume goes in your mouth, it goes down the esophagus where it enters the stomach. In the stomach, we start to actually break down carbohydrates more. So examples of carbohydrates are breads, fruits, and other sugary substances. Milk also has carbohydrate in it. Once that carbohydrate enters your stomach, your pancreas, which is an organ that you're very familiar with in the terms of diabetes, your pancreas gets a signal to secrete insulin. And insulin is a hormone. Now we're talking about type 2 diabetes today mostly. Type 2 diabetes, your pancreas does get the signal to secrete insulin. You might be familiar with type 1 diabetes, and we're not talking about that today, but in type 1 diabetes, the pancreas does not secrete insulin at all. So once the food is secreted down from the stomach into the small intestine, which is about 20 feet long, the food is broken down into what we call simple sugars. And this is the point where you can start absorbing the sugar into your bloodstream. Another point that I'd like to make on this digestion slide, when we eat fiber, such as the fiber that's in fruits and vegetables and whole grains, fiber does not break down into those simple sugars in your small intestine. Therefore, it does not go into the blood system like sugar. Fiber passes through your entire digestive system and creates more bulk. So therefore, eating a high fiber diet is beneficial in diabetes because it does not break down into glucose or sugar. So just kind of remember some of these things when we're talking about the carbohydrate digestion. So on the next picture here, we kind of make it like a cartoon, but it's showing little trucks, and the trucks here indicate your blood glucose or your blood sugar. So let's take a look at that number A slide, or letter A, and it's these little trucks. Those are the glucose. They're traveling around your blood system, and the goal is to get that glucose or sugar into the cells, and those cells are indicated here by little doors. And there is a key on the door that opens up the cell so the glucose can feed your cell. That key is insulin. So on the top picture, that blue organ, it shows the stomach emptying into the small intestine. And there, the little trucks start driving out of the small intestine. And that pancreas, that brown organ that's underneath the stomach, is starting to shoot out keys with it too, to go open the cells. Okay? So in the case of type 2 diabetes, we make those keys. We have a little bit of insulin that helps open the doors. However, what we call it in diabetes is insulin resistance. They don't work very well. So you might have some of those doors that don't open up to feed the cell, therefore the blood glucose stays in the blood, resulting in a high blood sugar. Okay, so we're not going to talk about the second picture, but that's an example of how our liver can store glucose if we need it in case of a rainy day. But we're just talking about that first one where the doors are opening and the glucose or sugar can get in your cells. Okay, so overarching themes here with eating a balanced diet. One, remember that carbohydrates provide a quick source of glucose. So if you eat something that has carbohydrate in it, the fruits, the breads, the milks, and the simple sugars, that can immediately turn into glucose or sugar in your blood. The next point is that protein basically reduces your blood sugar from going, makes it go into your bloodstream slowly. So for example, if you have a piece of bread, that's carbohydrate. If you put some peanut butter on that bread, that protein in the peanut butter slows down the sugar from going into your blood too quickly, which is beneficial. Okay, and then the third point here are those fibers. They slow down digestion of carbohydrate and can make your blood sugar more manageable. Okay, so we want to include all of those foods. MyPlate for meal planning is a very basic way for all people to eat healthy. And by all people, I mean young people and old people. If you are a vegetarian or vegan, you can follow this model. So there's a way that we can put all of our food choices into this MyPlate. And now this is the most simple, basic. So if you want to just stop and focus on this right here, the more advanced choices for eating will be in the following slides here. But the MyPlate concept is very simple. You split your plate into quarters. Half of your plate should be what we call non-starchy vegetables. These are the vegetables high in fiber and very low in carbohydrate. So you have your dark green leafy vegetables like broccoli and spinach and kale, carrots, cucumbers, tomatoes, onions, all of these things fit in this category. And you can look online or get resources that have lists of non-starchy vegetables. So again, at your meals, half your plate should be the non-starchy vegetables. The next quarter of your plate should be a lean protein. On this slide, it looks like a grilled chicken breast. So the quarter of your plate is an appropriate portion size for protein at every meal. Again, you don't have to eat animal proteins if you don't currently have that in your meal plan, but the portion should be about the palm of your hand or a quarter of your plate. Again, the protein does not contribute to carbohydrate, making your blood glucose go up, but it does have other functions, and we want to include protein at every meal. The final quarter of your plate would be a starchy vegetable or a whole grain. Now, these are the things that do break down into carbohydrate or glucose, so that's why we want to limit the portion size of it. So whether you have a potato or pasta or rice, we want to control the portion size to a quarter of your plate for that each meal. If you drink milk or calcium fortified beverages, we would want a small portion of that at every meal, and a small portion is 1 cup or 8 ounces. That does contribute to carbohydrate, so we limit the portion per meal. As well as using fruit. A lot of people with diabetes that I work with like to save their fruit choices for snacks, but you certainly could include it in a meal. A serving of fruit is a small banana, a small apple, or about the palm of your hand worth of other fruits. Berries is a nice serving size. It's 1 whole cup. So if you cupped your hands together, that would be 1 cup or 1 serving of fruit for berries. And then, of course, if you wanted to add some healthy fats like olive oil or an oil-based dressing, that would be good here on those vegetables. So if you get confused in the more detailed information to come back to this MyPlate concept and work on making your portions fit in this concept for your diabetes prevention or management. So now getting a little more complex here, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, again, are broken down into glucose molecules or sugar, and the glucose molecules can cause an increase in blood glucose. By controlling the amount of carbohydrate that you ingest at a time, you can better manage your blood glucose levels. When we're looking at carbohydrate counting, we talk in terms of choices and grams. So again, there are lists available online, but there's a few listed here. So for example, 1 pita, like an ounce of pita bread, which would be a small, probably a quarter of the whole pita, would be 1 carb choice. 1 slice of bread is 1 carb choice. 1 cup of unsweetened cereal like Cheerios would be 1 carb choice. 1/3 of a cup of rice or pasta would be 1 carb choice. Now, I encourage people to actually get out those good old measuring cups, because most of us have bowls and plates that are much bigger than 1 serving. So next time you have pasta or rice or cereal, take out that measuring cup and measure what 1 serving is. Again, 1/3 of a cup of pasta or 1 cup of cereal, and see how many fit in your bowl. And as mentioned earlier, a small piece of fruit, 8 ounces of milk can be 1 carb choice. So we'll review some more. When we're looking at carbohydrate counting for managing or preventing diabetes, it's broken down individually, again, with your dietitian or your diabetes educator, but this is a chart that shows generally what we should be looking for. So you can find your category. I'll look under women, and we'll say that that woman wants to lose some weight. So she would be looking at each meal for 2 to 3 carbohydrate choices per meal. In addition, she would get those half a plate of vegetables and a little bit of protein at every meal. Now, when we were talking about in terms of carb choices, we were talking about a serving. If you look at a nutrition label, One carb choice is 15 grams of carbohydrate, and we will cover that more soon. But this woman now that wants to lose weight, if you're looking at that category, she would be shooting for 2 to 3 carb choices or 30 to 45 grams of carbohydrate per meal or less. Okay, so you can use that chart to find where you would fit in with your carb choices. Here's the information about nutrition labels. The good thing about nutrition labels is they all look the same. So if you're comparing two, say, breakfast cereals, you can look at the carbohydrate grams and the fiber to compare apples to apples. So on this example, it looks like a cup of whatever this is, let's say it's cereal, is total carbohydrate 17 grams of carbohydrate. If I eat 2 servings of this product, because it says there's 2 servings per container and I eat the whole thing, I would multiply that 17 grams times 2 to give me 34 grams total of carbohydrate. Now, if I go back to that woman who I wanted to lose weight and it's 2 to 3 choices per meal, I can go over and use this chart to your right, and it says 26 to 35 grams of carbohydrate is 2 carb choices. This would fit into my meal plan. So again, using food labels can be very helpful for your carbohydrate counting. As mentioned before, fiber has very little impact on blood glucose levels. So that's a good thing. You will notice on a nutrition label that carbohydrate is directly underneath, fiber is directly underneath carbohydrate. So on this example, I have a product that has 5 grams of fiber. In theory, I can subtract that 5 grams away from the carbohydrate grams to give me a total of what we call net carbs, or 5 grams really is absorbing into my system. So that's, again, a good thing. So for example, let's say you have a breakfast cereal that you really enjoy, and it says 25 grams of carbohydrate per serving, but it has 8 grams of fiber. You can subtract that 8 grams of fiber from the 25 to give you less net carbs, or carbs that are affecting your blood sugar. So fiber is a good thing. We want you to eat 25 to 35 grams of fiber every day. Most diabetes educators and dietitians work with patients and they give them what we call carbohydrate counting lists. So these are examples of portions of food that fit in the carbohydrate counting plan. So here's one example here. It's probably a little bit hard for you to read, but again, you can look online or you can get these lists from your dietitian or diabetes educator. So we're going to practice using this list. Let's say for breakfast we're having 1 English muffin, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, a half a medium banana, and a cup of black coffee. Using my list here, I'm looking for the English muffin first. It says that a half an English muffin is 1 carb choice. So I'm eating the whole thing, each half. That will give me 2 carb choices. The peanut butter is not a carbohydrate choice. This is a protein, so I'm not counting that towards my carbohydrate. And the banana is a carbohydrate. And according to my list, a small banana is 1 carbohydrate. So my half of my medium banana would be 1 carbohydrate choice. Coffee, unless you're adding sugar or cream, does not contribute to carbohydrate. So this is a free food, or it does not affect my blood sugar. So my total breakfast is 3 carbohydrate choices, or 45 grams. Again, going back to that example we use of the woman that wants to lose weight, this would probably be an appropriate meal for her breakfast. So let's do a little quiz here. We have Lisa, who's a 62-year-old woman who's trying to lose weight. She was recently diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. How many carbohydrate choices, I have Mary and Lisa, we'll say Lisa still, Lisa have per meal? So, according to what we use on our chart, the answer for her would be 2 to 3 choices. And another example for you, she could have a slice of whole wheat toast, she could have 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, and she could have a half a banana for that meal choice to fit in her plan. Let's practice again. We're going to try to modify this. This looks like a picnic or a really heavy picnic meal. How would you modify this meal to reduce the carbohydrate counting? Now, there's not one right answer here. I work with people all the time to include the foods they enjoy. So if you are a person that does not want to give up that treat once in a while, we say that's okay. You can include that treat in your carbohydrate counting plan. So you can look at this meal and see how you would modify it. It's roast beef, corn, mashed potatoes, spinach, gravy, a dinner roll, and some sweet tea. So again, some people would say, oh, I could do without that sweet tea. I don't need sugary beverages. So I'm going to have water. Other people would want to include it, but maybe they want to get rid of the roll and the mashed potatoes. So it's your choice, but we'll look on the next slide and see what an example modification could be. So here we added some of those free vegetables. We made half that plate a little salad. So we also, we kept the roast beef in, but we took away the corn because that's a starchy vegetable, and we added asparagus because that's a free vegetable. Instead of the mashed potatoes, we added sweet potato wedges. Again, these are going to be higher in fiber and probably a little bit less carbohydrate. And instead of doing that cream spinach, might be a little heavy in fat, we added that salad here. Because we took away the mashed potatoes, we took away the gravy and the dinner roll and the sweet tea, and we added lemon water. So my original meal that I showed you was 108 grams of carbohydrate, and we moved it all the way down to 25 grams of carbohydrate, which would fit into a carbohydrate counting meal plan. So hopefully that example was helpful for you. Just a little bit on hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. Now, most people with type 2 diabetes are not on the medication that makes their blood sugar go low, but it is quite possible. In fact, some people that aren't even diagnosed with type 2 diabetes yet tell us they have symptoms of hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. Typically, a hypoglycemia number is somewhere between 60 and 70 if they check their blood glucose. Some symptoms can be irritability, weakness, and dizziness. They might become weak, shaky, or trembly, and some people report a racing heart. So again, the best thing if you have diabetes and you have these symptoms is to test your blood sugar to see if you truly are low. And then what we call the next information here is called the rule of 15 for hypoglycemia. Again, this is for people that are either on medication or insulin that makes their blood sugar go low, or they're having abnormally low blood sugars for other reasons. So if you have the symptoms and your blood sugar is low, we say eat or drink 15 grams of easily digestible carbohydrate. An example of this is just 4 ounces of orange juice. That's a very small serving. And then the next 15 is you wait 15 minutes. Now this can be uncomfortable. People tell us that they don't like waiting when their blood sugar is low. They feel uncomfortable. And so setting a timer is helpful. What happens a lot is people feel so uncomfortable and nervous about their low blood sugar, they over-treat it, and then their result is a high blood sugar that's dangerously high. So again, we want 15 grams of carbohydrate and then wait 15 minutes. Then we retest or see how you feel. If you're still low after those 15 minutes, you would want to repeat again. So hypoglycemia should not be happening that often or at all if you are on a diabetes medication. So please talk to your doctor about that if it's happening more than once or twice a week, and we can change your treatment plan. Now getting a little bit more complicated on the carb counting. So we talked about the MyPlate, which is a simple concept, moving up to carbohydrate counting. Now we'll talk about this concept called glycemic effect of food. The glycemic effect is the effect of food on a person's blood glucose and insulin response. How fast and how high the blood glucose rises and how quickly the body brings it back to normal. So we have a ranking called the GI, or glycemic index. It ranks foods on the basis of the extent to which the food rises the blood sugar compared with pure glucose or pure sugar. So there's a little chart that shows you here. The first one is showing high GI foods. So examples would be white bread, orange juice, sugar. You see that blue line where the blood sugar quickly rises and then quickly goes down before 1 hour of time goes by. So this would be foods you'd want to limit or avoid because you don't want these high peaks and valleys in your blood sugar. What we're shooting for is more low glycemic index foods or low GI foods. Some examples of these include apples, yogurt, lentils, things that have more fiber in them and more protein. So that red line there shows, let's say you were to eat an apple. It's a more moderate rise in your blood sugar that slowly comes down after a few hours. So when you're looking at what our blood sugar should be doing, we would rather have gradual increases and not for it to go down quickly. So again, that's the GI carbohydrate counting list, and that again is available online, or your diabetes educator or dietitian could give you those lists. Another topic that a lot of people ask us about are sugar and sugar sweet alternatives or sweeteners. Non-nutritive sweeteners are synthetic or natural ingredients added to food and beverages to provide sweetness, but it doesn't provide many calories. So examples would be saccharin or stevia, aspartame, Splenda. And these are added to foods, say diet beverages. If you're a person that likes soda and you have diabetes and you want to reduce your sugar intake, switching to a diet soda would reduce that carb intake. Now, a few things to remember is that adding these sweeteners does not guarantee weight loss. In fact, some recent research has found that people that consume higher amounts of these foods and beverages actually eat more calories in a day than a person that doesn't consume them. And they're doing some research on if that is related to hormones and hunger and fullness and what those sweeteners do to your brain. So reducing the amount that you consume in a day is a good idea. Another thing to remember is that your dentist will tell you any carbohydrate containing food, even these artificial sweeteners, can promote tooth decay. And if you look at lists of the acidity and the tooth decay promoting properties of beverages, diet soda is actually higher than regular soda. So they're not good for your teeth. So if you are looking at using some of these sweeteners, it does decrease the carbohydrate content of food. However, we should use them moderately to keep our teeth and our weight healthy. So back on with the carbohydrate content of sugar, now we can go back into the even more complex concept is using what we call diabetes exchanges. So again, if your mind is a little bit overwhelmed with all this information, go back to that MyPlate concept. But if you're ready for more, this is where we'd want to really look at your food groups and how much you have in a day. So appropriate calorie levels for people are those that will maintain them at a healthy weight. If you currently are overweight and you would like to lose a little bit over time, we need you to eat a few less calories in a day. So there are 5 categories here of caloric intake levels. So let's take that woman that wants to lose weight. Most likely she would be in the 1,500 calorie, maybe even 1,200 calories a day to maintain or lose a little bit of weight. Okay, let's say she's going to eat 1,500 calories. These exchanges show how many portions of each food you could have in a day. So for example, she could be eating up to 8 servings of starch or bread. But I would go back down to that MyPlate where it's a quarter of a plate. And so probably more like 4 or 5 per day from the starch or bread. Fruits and vegetables, we want this woman to eat a lot of them, 4 to 5 to 6 a day to promote health. Milk, she could have 2 servings a day, and fat, she could have 3 servings a day. So again, you're taking that overall day of calories and breaking it down into food groups so you can more appropriately eat a balanced diet. People ask about snacking a lot. Snacking does not have to be part of a healthy meal planning goal, but it can be. If you are snacking in your day, number one, make sure you include some protein, and we have some examples here. If you are having snacks and you want to prevent diabetes or you have diabetes, we suggest 0 to 1 carbohydrate choices. Okay? And I always tell people that I work with, a snack should never be bigger than what you can hold in your hand. If it doesn't fit in your hand, that's a meal and it's not a snack. So some examples following those guidelines would be veggies and hummus, whole grain chips and salsa, an apple with peanut butter, whole grain crackers and cheese, a trail mix, a half a sandwich or a very small portion of a sandwich, or fruit and cottage cheese. All of those things include that little bit of protein as well as 0 to 1 carbohydrate choices. We used to tell people, or some medications used to require people to snack, especially at nighttime, and that's not necessarily the case now. So make sure you work with your doctor and dietitian and ask about snacks. So let's practice again with a little quiz here. Which of the following meals has approximately 40 grams of carbohydrate, or that would be that 3 choices? So take a look and see which one you would select here. And I'll give you a second to think about that. Yeah, we're probably going to go with answer, or the second one, the B. It's 1 cup of oatmeal is 30 grams of carbohydrate, or 2 choices. A half a cup of berries would be about 8 grams of carbohydrate, or a half a choice. The nuts are good protein and good fat. And then the coffee is considered a free food. Okay, so that would be an appropriate meal planning goal with about 2 to 3 carbohydrate choices. So practicing with meal planning is helpful. It's also helpful to make grocery lists and looking at recipes maybe in the newspaper or in magazines or online, and having a plan when you go in so you can plan appropriately, save some money, and eat healthy. So if you have any questions or you want to make an individualized meal plan for your diabetes, please see a registered dietitian, and we have our diabetes educator at Grand Itasca as well. And the appointment line is listed here. So thank you, and healthy eating to you.